on Atlanta News First Plus. We really appreciate you being with us. I'm Joy Lim Nakrin, and I'm joined today by a special guest. We have attorney J. Edward Shipp joining us for our Atlanta News First Plus stream. And what we're talking about right now is a very important motions hearing happening today in the YSL case. It actually is going to get underway just about half hour from now on our special event stream. We're going to show it to you live on our special event stream here on Atlanta News First Plus. The reason why this is so important is this motions hearing that is happening today is about the use of rap lyrics as evidence. Of course, prosecutors are trying to use rap lyrics as evidence of potential guilt in this massive racketeering case. Defense attorneys argue it's just a form of artistic expression. It should be kept out in terms of evidence. It should be considered inadmissible. But just to kind of recap and remind people what this trial is all about, Young Thug, rapper Young Thug, and several others, initially was 28 others who were indicted in this massive racketeering case, and now it's down to 6 defendants because numerous defendants have either been severed or they have had the charges against them dismissed or they have reached plea deals with prosecutors. But again, this is just a hot button issue here is really the use of rap lyrics as evidence. So attorney J. Edward Shipp joining us as we expect this motions hearing to get underway less than half an hour from now. What kind of arguments do you think we're going to hear?
Thank you, Joy, for having me. I think we're going to hear arguments. Of course, we're going to hear arguments in favor of keeping this lyrics out of the purview of the jury. However, what is most likely going to happen is the judge may follow 11th Circuit law, which has already stated that most of the times these lyrics will be added in. What attorneys for YSL defendants may argue is that the lyrics in question are very general and they only speak about general acts, not anything specific. So therefore, their probative value would be very weak. For this reason, they would try to keep this out. And if they are able to keep it out under the guise of it being weak for probative value, then it would be a win for them. But I'm pretty sure the prosecution is going to argue that, hey, they are speaking about specific acts. They are speaking about, how they keep the gang moving, how the gang continues to wreak havoc in the streets of Atlanta. Of course, the prosecution is going to try and paint this as a picture of this is just more evidence that they use their influence to send this out through lyrics.
And it's like we said, it started off as a massive case with rapper Young Thug and 28 others initially indicted here, and now just down to 6 defendants. But one of the most recent to basically be separated from the case was Durante BB, also known as B, who reached a plea deal with prosecutors and admitted to the racketeering charges, drug and gun charges, essentially carjacking and numerous other things. Do we expect to have defendants like that turn on or testify against the others?
Most likely there will be some testimony by other defendants. Of course, the prosecution would not be giving out these deals unless they were able to, give the defendants a shot at testifying against their co-defendants. So it is very likely that we will see these co-defendants come in, testify against their cohorts, and say, hey, YSL is a real thing. It is not a record label. It is an actual gang. And for those reasons, here's the evidence that you can use to go ahead and say, hey, this is what is really happening out here in the streets of Atlanta. So,
and the fact that some individuals have already pleaded guilty to some of the charges, does that bode poorly for Young Thug and the remaining defendants who are still set to stand trial?
I think it paints the picture that there is an actual gang that exists, and I think it's going to be a high burden for Young Thug and his attorneys to overcome to try and say this doesn't exist when you have a number of co-defendants who are admitting, yes, this does exist, I was a part of it, and these are things that we did, such as robbery, extortion, carjacking, etc. So it's going to be a high burden for Young Thug and his attorneys to overcome, but I'm pretty sure the attorneys for Young Thug and his co-defendants, the remaining co-defendants, are very in tune and very cognizant of what they expect these other co-defendants to testify to.
Yeah, and it is important to note that, you know, of course, defense attorneys claim it's not a gang. So prosecutors are alleging that YSL stands for Young,
Young Slime
Young
Life, I
Slime
believe.
Life, Young Slime Life, which is a gang. And defense attorneys are claiming that it's actually a record label and it stands for Young Stoner Life. So that's a whole controversy in itself and an important part of this case for sure. Anything else that you want us to keep in mind as we're watching for this motions hearing to begin at 1:30 p.m.?
I want everybody to keep in mind that, everyone is afforded their First Amendment rights to speech. However, we have to be thoughtful and mindful of sometimes this speech can be used as evidence against us, especially when it can be considered a party opponent admission. And that's most likely what the prosecution is going to be arguing, that this is just an admission by the party opponent, who is the defendant, Young Thug in this case, just to keep it concise. And they're going to say, hey, he is admitting that there is a YSL gang. So let's go ahead and have this admitted into evidence.
And we should point out Georgia Congressman Hank Johnson has twice now introduced legislation aimed at limiting the admissibility of evidence involving lyrics. But Fonnie Willis has said, basically publicly said, here's some free legal advice. Don't confess in lyrics if you don't want it used against you.
That's pretty much correct. I think it draws a kind of a parallel to some of the other songs that we may have heard over the years. I mean, Bob Marley has a song called I Shot the Sheriff, but he wasn't prosecuted for shooting the sheriff. The Killers have their own songs. Johnny Cash has his own songs. I mean, there's a whole subgenre of what is called country murder ballads, but these certain individuals aren't being prosecuted. I think it lends into the idea that many have that these particular defendants are being prosecuted because of their race. However, again, if you're going to do crimes, it would be probably in your best interest not to say anything about said crimes over, catchy beat or whatnot.
Right, absolutely. Very big case that we're going to continue to follow. And just again, a reminder for our viewers that starting at 1:30 p.m., we expect that motions hearing to get underway. And this is all about whether rap lyrics can be used as evidence in the YSL case. Is a pretrial motions hearing. And the trial itself begins with opening statements the Monday after Thanksgiving, which is November 27th. And we're going to stream that here on Atlanta News First Plus as well. But just check over on our stream, the special events stream at 1:30 p.m. if you want to actually watch that motions hearing. I want to also talk about another major legal issue that we have been following very closely here on Atlanta News First as well. And this is actually, all about abortion laws, and what the future looks like surrounding, reproductive rights and the law surrounding that here in Georgia. Well, in Ohio, voters approved a constitutional amendment just yesterday, which ensures access to abortion, other forms of reproductive health care as well. And this is really a victory for abortion rights supporters. It's the latest one since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade last year. So Ohio became the 7th state where voters decided to protect abortion access after that landmark ruling. It was the only state to consider a statewide abortion rights question this year, actually. So here in Georgia, just a reminder that late last month, our Supreme Court, Georgia State Supreme Court, rejected a lower court ruling that the state's restrictive abortion law was invalid, leaving limited access to abortions unchanged for now. So again, we have what many call the heartbeat law, and again, this is something that many critics call widely restrictive, and so Georgia's law bans most abortions after roughly 6 weeks, and that's controversial for a lot of people in itself. Okay, so Jay, looking at these pieces, what we know has happened here in the state of Georgia, and then what's happened over in the state of Ohio, what is the implications for us in Georgia based on what you've seen in Ohio?
So let's take it from the top. The Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, basically in their opinion on abortion, gave it back to the states for saying it was a states' rights issue. So Ohio exercised this by saying, okay, we're going to have a constitutional amendment added to our state's constitution and enshrine upon that the right for a woman in Ohio to have an abortion. This was successful, as you can see. They won the constitutional amendment. So now it is enshrined in their constitution that a woman has a right to an abortion. In Georgia, I think this says to the activists, the politicians, all of the stakeholders in this, that it is a states' rights issue, and it can be made to be something that we can give over to the people of the state. Whether or not it is done by a constitutional convention or whether or not it is done by a proposed amendment in either house of the legislature, whether it be the Senate or the House, is up for debate. But it would probably be a politically smart move if the legislators were to say, okay, let's give it to the people. Let's allow them to decide and say, okay, if we get a 2/3 majority that says that we're going to add this proposed amendment, then we'll definitely put it before the voters for a vote. And that's really the implication that this decision in Ohio has. It just highlights that it really is, in this current climate, a states' rights issue.
And so potentially then we could see something like that here in Georgia.
We could see something like that in Georgia. It depends on whether or not these political leaders we have now are politically astute enough to say, hey, I'm not going to go against my respective party's platform, but I will leave it up to the people to decide, and then whatever they decide we'll go along with. If they put it into the hands of the voters, then I believe it works out well for them, because now you have one party that cannot be construed as saying, hey, we just took over women's rights, we're meddling in the rights of women. And then on the other hand, you have another party that says, okay, you gave it to us and we showed you either A, we want this to happen, or B, there wasn't enough political voting to say we need this or we want this at this time. So we could see this in Georgia very well.
Mm-hmm. Any final thoughts on this?
Again, it all boils down to whether or not the political leaders in Georgia, whether it be the House of Representatives or the Georgia senators, whether or not they want to make the decision to say, hey, we're going to put this in the hands of the voters. You guys, you figure it out. They have until the general election of next year to figure it out. So we may very well see a proposed amendment come in the next politically expedient House that may come up.
All right. Well, thank you so much. J. Edward Shipp, attorney at law based here in Atlanta. Every time you do one of these streams with us, people ask about you and maybe they need legal advice. How should they reach out?
They should reach out to me on Facebook, JAYSHIPP, or they can reach out to me on Instagram, JShipLaw, or they can just visit my website, jshiplaw.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to our viewers for tuning in. Again, just want to remind everyone to check out our special events stream on Atlanta News First Plus. If you want to watch that motions hearing, again, in the YSL case, this is a very important motions hearing where a judge will be hearing arguments on the use of rap lyrics as evidence. Can they be used as evidence of guilt against the defendants, or can they not? Or are they just forms of artistic expression? That is the very important debate, one of the centerpieces of this major trial. Again, you can watch and listen to all those arguments live stream on Atlanta News First Plus, our special events stream. Thanks so much for being with us. Have a great day.
had a